The lion roars. Welcome into another edition of the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast, pre-Christmas edition. So I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy Hanukkah. We got a great show ahead. Four-time Super Bowl champion and former Penn State Nittany Lion All-American Matt Millen is here. That is a treat. Mike Gross, the Gross Rational Product, Frank Bodani of the York Daily Record, and myself here as we get you ready for Penn State versus Clemson in Yankee Stadium. Guys, I know it's the Pinstripe Bowl. I know it's not a major bowl game. It's the ultimate failure bowl for these two teams with the expectations that they came in with. But it's still pretty cool. If you're going to play in a low-level bowl game, to play at Yankee Stadium, it's pretty cool. Am I right?
Yeah. The ultimate failure bowl would have been them in Detroit the day after Christmas, and we avoided that.
I would have avoided that too. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm a little scared about is it still the open air press box situation at Yankee Stadium?
That's a concern. Yeah, that is a concern. We're going to have to go to the Long Johns, which I often do anyway, because I'm always cold, but bundle up, baby, bundle up.
You guys are making us seem not tough as sports writers.
We're not tough. We're so not tough. We work on keyboards.
Okay.
We do hit people.
For all the listeners who don't know where I'm from Schuylkill County. Hardcore. We are all tough in Schuylkill County.
You have a T-shirt that says that? Hard?
I don't, but I got 3 bottles of Boilo down in my kitchen right now.
That's all you need to know.
So
no Long Johns needed with that.
No Long Johns needed.
The last time Penn State played in the Pinstripe Bowl, the weather was like May. It was unbelievable.
That won't happen again.
That won't happen again. That's right. So it's going to be. In fact, the Pinstripe Bowl media gift the last time was a knit hat.
Yeah.
I should have worn that. I didn't think of that. I still have.
You still have it?
Yeah,
I've never worn mine. I keep all my bowl gifts in a box except for the Rose Bowl watch, which is up here. I keep all my bowl gifts.
No, I usually have. I wear the Rose Bowl watch, but anyway.
All right, moving on to the game. Enough about us.
Yeah,
oh, by the way, just one quick shout out. Frank, earlier this year, you asked Mike Gross to give me parental advice. And Mike said, being a dad you think it's going to be a lot. It's going to be more than you could ever possibly think. Getting through this season was a lot, and trying to do Christmas with a 4-month-old daughter. My God, to all the dads and moms out there, I salute you.
You're not there yet, but you're getting there.
Yeah. Oh, great advice, Mike. Thank you. Opt-outs for Penn State. Clemson has a lot. What is it, 27 right now?
27 who are either opt-outs or injury, which could be sort of an opt-out. Yeah, but 27 is a big number, according to the coach.
Yeah.
That's according to Dabo Swinney.
Penn State, Terry Smith asked earlier today about opt-outs. Kind of, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 times, actually, to try and go over what was going on. He was pretty insightful. You're not traveling with us unless you're practicing, which we'll get more into like leadership and everything later on in this. So I thought that was an actual key. He was asked about the Peach Bowl. Penn State only with 4 guys right now: Singleton, Wheatley, Durant, and Big Vega. None of those guys are a surprise. How many more opt-outs are you expecting Penn State to have for this bowl game?
That's a good question, because the Peach Bowl, we ended up finding out at least 2 or 3 of them the day of or right before the game.
Yeah, and kids who traveled to the game. And
we thought Alan King was playing in the game. I think James even said he was like a few days before, and he didn't. So I don't know how you completely gauge it. I have a feeling, though, that you're going to get guys that are going to be like the Peach Bowl too, guys that are on like play counts, So if Katron Allen, for example, we don't hear anything about him opting out and he plays, does he only play the first 2 series of the game? Barkley kind of balanced it probably better than anybody, because he played a real role in that Fiesta Bowl, but he didn't play the whole game by any means, but he did more than just token, maybe you have a lot of that. I'm interested in the offensive line, because I honestly would have thought that by now we would have heard that there would have been more than just Big Vega opting out of the game.
Yeah.
So, and that's a big component because their line is so experienced that you could see 3 or 4 guys deciding maybe not to play. And if they do, but they're literally all on play counts, like what is the difference between the first half and the second half going to look like with all of a sudden you have starters in to start the game. And then by third quarter, you have almost all backups and you have Tyke Hayes running the football. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it could be a dramatic difference in game between the way it starts and the way it keeps going.
I agree. I think the offensive line is a big piece of it, especially because, you have to have 5 of them out there. And ideally you have 5 who have worked together a little bit and can communicate with each other and all that stuff. So you can't, I don't see how you can manage that the way a running back would manage it, like you just mentioned with Barkley. And that's going to be something to watch. And I guess, they have good depth on the offensive line, but it's not like they're 12 deep where they could just run guys in and out. And that's not a good thing to do with an offensive line if you do have.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think this is a sign of, Terry Smith, loyalty to Terry Smith, that, Dunko is playing as of now. And those guys like that, I think that's a loyalty thing to him. I don't see Rucci opting out. His dad played at Penn State, knowing a little bit about the family. And I think, I think so. This is a good game for NFL scouts to watch. I mean, it's still Penn State versus Clemson. And I know Penn State guys could put a lot of stuff on film in this game. And I know that's a mantra for Terry Smith. And I Frank, Barkley nailed it. You're 100% right. And I think that's why Katron Allen is playing. And with the record, he could put a little more yardage on his record, stuff like that if he goes through it. I think that those are all components. The other component of this, not only opt-outs, you're cobbling a staff. Terry Smith also talked about who's calling plays, who's doing this. We know Poindexter is calling the defense, as Coach Terry Smith said. I think pretty much everybody expected that as Jim Knowles becomes Penn State former defensive coordinator for Penn State to go to Tennessee now, or Penn State go. It's retrack. Josh Heupel has high expectations. He takes all of Penn State's brush offs to become his defensive coordinator. So, but yeah, I mean, how difficult is that? Do you get a sense from talking to the players?
You know what? I guess it's situational, but if you go back to 2015, Penn State played in the Tax Slayer Bowl against Georgia, who basically was coached by like GAs. I mean, and now Penn State still lost the game. So Georgia did not look like a disorganized mess. So I think you can get this done, and I think they will. For example, Anthony Poindexter. He's suddenly calling plays, but he's done this before, right? I think this might be his 3rd time stepping up from his safeties position to actually run things temporarily and call plays. So I think he's probably pretty good with that. I think he'll be able to step right in. So I think it's the overall maybe interesting to hear some of the guys say about how focused they are on the game itself, because to me, that's the key. If the players go about just focusing on what they need to do in their roles, I don't know if maybe all that moving parts with the assistants matter as much as what we may think.
I don't know. Maybe I'm dense, but it wasn't clear to me until the last couple of days that Kotelnicki was still here. I mean, they named an offensive coordinator pretty quickly after Campbell was hired. He's bringing in his guy. I don't know. I had the impression he was out of here. He will be out of here, of course, but I had the impression he already was. But he is going to be the offensive coordinator.
Last week, it kind of made it. Some people were reporting, not myself. It's not like I got any kind of info, but I saw other people reporting pretty quickly that he was going to stay. And that's the real question. When these guys leave, some go and some stay? That's a really weird part of this, because what we learned today is that obviously Marcus Hagans, the wide receivers coach, is being replaced, but he also is staying to coach the game. And I think what it is that if the assistants that are leaving have any buy-in, they will stay because that just makes it easier. I think it's too much to put anything on coaching a current position group on a guy who's just getting here. I mean, you can't expect any of the new guys to really do any of that. So it's either Kotelnicki and Higgins, for example, stay, or you literally have GAs that are already there doing it, because I don't think the alternative is even really feasible.
Yeah,
so
who in the offensive staff would do it if not Kotelnicki?
And, if Andy doesn't...
You don't have an equivalent of Poindexter on the offensive side.
Right. And if Andy doesn't have a job, he's getting paid to do this. I mean, maybe that's not so crazy for him to stay with it. I mean, Jim Knowles is taking another job, so we understand it. And the next big domino will be defensive coordinator for Penn State. Who is that new guy? Does Anthony Poindexter have a shot even? Or are they, now you're hearing reports that maybe they're trying to focus on Danton Lynn, the former Penn State defensive back who's at USC. Could he become the new DC? And will they try to keep Poindexter? I think he's one of the most intriguing behind the scenes guys, because I think in some ways he's so highly regarded. He's interviewed for head jobs, and he's been content to be a position coach at Penn State. So will they try to keep him or not?
Did he interview for Virginia?
Yeah, I guess that's an alma mater kind of. I don't want to say it.
Still interviewed for it. Yeah.
When you're at Scott Stadium and you walk into their media room, there's a Poindexter jersey hanging up in there. His is pretty prominently placed, if I remember correctly, from when I worked in Charlottesville. So is Heath Miller's, by the way, for the Steelers fans that listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So, yeah, coming up, got a great guest coming up, by the way. Kind of buried the lead on that one a little bit. Matt Millen, 4-time Super Bowl champion, former GM of the Detroit Lions, NFL documentarian, as the NFL has documented his life with a football life story. Matt Millen, been around the game a long time. We're really happy to have him here to talk about Matt Campbell and his relationship and what he thinks about Matt Campbell coming to Penn State. Guys, we're going to talk. I wanted to talk about leadership, and I have a soundbite here from yesterday's bowl media availability. There's been audio leaks from Pat Kraft talking. There was a second audio link. Somebody's voice is very prominently close to the microphone. I'm not saying that's who recorded the video, but it was very prominent. I'm sure you guys all heard it. But before we get into that, leadership at Penn State, King Mac, I want to say, went off on the leadership of the players this year on this Penn State football team. Here he is.
It's hard to be successful when people on your ship isn't worried or isn't all one-on-one mission, So the fact that, he's seen that, and he said that's his job to fix that, and he said straight up, he doesn't want no one who doesn't want to be here to be here. So we had a team meeting, and they made it very clear, like, if you don't want to be here, the door is open. Like, we don't want no one here who doesn't want to be here.
Yep, pretty much sums it up. I mean, it was a longer quote. I cut the first 20 seconds off. Mike, you wrote about it. Frank, you wrote about it. I mean, and talking before we recorded this, that was the only thing that you actually had to listen to for Bowl Media Day was King Mac speak.
Yeah, he carried it. He's a really good talker. Penn State is obviously controls the message in terms of the players talking to the media, and most of the players, toe the line. And once in a while, somebody comes along who acts like he didn't get the memo. And King Mac is that guy, and it's conversational. It's not a tirade. I don't think he went into that thinking, I'm gonna go off here. I'm gonna pop off like some athletes actually do that. But he is very. You get the feeling from King Mac that we're having a conversation and you're asking me a serious question, so I'm going to give you a serious answer. And I thought the most striking thing was him saying about Matt Campbell, he knows what went wrong. And I actually put that in the headline of what I wrote. Campbell knows what went wrong here in 2025. So yeah, anyway,
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I should have used that in my headline. I went with a little different direction on that story, but that might have been really good, actually. Nice job.
That's what I put that in the headline. King Mac says Campbell knows what went wrong. He knows what went wrong.
I like your King Mac intro this because it's more of a reporter type thing, but I remember interviewing him on like freshman media day before he left for Alabama and how good he was to the point I used him as a lead in my story. I thought this guy's great. Then he leaves a month ago and I'm like, oh man. Then he comes back and now he's as good, if not better than ever. So I hope to God he stays for at least one more season if we all get to report on him, because people like him don't come around much at Penn State. And I'm not saying he's in the same class, but as a talker, people will ask me best interviews. Well, there's LeVar, okay, because you had to be on every single time he talked because he would always say something almost that would be a story, all right? And then
Dan Morgan.
That's never going to go away. Who's Dan Morgan? And here we are 30 years later almost. Okay. So then Allen's, Brandon Short was good too, but then Alan Zamitis was incredible. I mean, when he gets on a teleconference and says, there is no way we should have just lost to Northwestern, and he goes off on it. Okay. You don't get that much. And then we could go through others, but King Mac, the way he just said it, and like you said, Mike, very conversationalist, gave you insights. He talked about a lack of leadership. He talked about a lack of buy-in. He talked about a lack of accountability. And that really, I think, is such an indictment because this was supposed to be the most experienced, battle-tested team ever under James Franklin, and maybe one of the most of those qualities in recent Penn State memory. And to be able to say that team did not have leadership, accountability, and buy-in, I think it was huge in a way.
Somebody brought up the now infamous Pat Kraft audio tape, and he used the word, King Mac used the word selfishness in describing whoever was the secret recorder of that thing. And he was stunned. He said he was stunned to find out from his parents. His parents are quoting from the tape, and he didn't know it was public. And
he's very prominent on the tape.
Yeah.
King Mac is like, at one point you thought it was a one-on-one conversation between him and Pat Kraft. I mean, when they're talking about recruiting and like why guys come here. So, I mean,
I saw it, yeah.
So King Mac isn't just a talker with the media. He talks to the people running the university as if he's just having that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Which, just give you a small example of this. One of the Wednesday nights during the season, I asked him something about, there was a small group around it. It wasn't just me. There was a small group around us. And I asked him something about picking up Knowles' defense and how complicated it is, blah, blah, blah. And he was the only person who mentioned, hey, I asked to be in the meeting with the defensive coaches so I can watch film with them and understand it better. And now other guys are doing that too. And, that's sort of, I'm not saying it's an earth-shattering news, but it's an interesting insight that nobody else was offering up, that he just brought it up.
And the kid has talent. I mean, he's not a star by any means, like some of the other players we mentioned here in past. He's certainly not like has Matt Millen's cachet but he's got talent. And I go back, I'll have this ingrained, is what a great interception. What a great play and read he made on Heisman Trophy winner Fernando Mendoza in that Indiana game to pick off that pass. That was one of the better defensive plays. And he almost won the game a little later with his blitzing. I mean, he was close to basically sending Fernando to the hospital, I think, on a couple of those. So the kid has potential. He said he's not sure yet if he's coming back to Penn State. And yet, I'm kind of, I think as a Penn State fan, you really hope he will, not just for his play, but maybe this leadership and his honesty.
Yeah.
I think he's coming back.
Yeah.
With what he said and the way he speaks about Matt Campbell, unless somebody offers him a massive bag or something is the only way I could see him leaving.
And maybe that's in the back of a lot of these kids' minds.
Yeah.
At least right now, at this
Right.
stage of the process. Yeah.
Because, Terry Smith said he made it sound like today he mentioned guys like for next year's leaders. Now, this might be just coach speak, but he mentioned King Mac, Anthony Donko, and Tony Rojas. And this isn't news because we don't really know who's staying, who's going, any of that stuff. But I think there's something in the back of our minds that if some players wanted to leave for different opportunities, Tony Rojas might be the head of that list. So is that just kind of wishful, hopeful thinking, or because it's our biggest puzzle then now will be what this team looks like going beyond the Pinstripe Bowl? What is this roster? Who's staying? Who's going? And what does it mean for those who will? Because, you said about the audio leak. Well, whoever did that, could that person possibly still be on this team?
And they probably, they almost certainly know now who did it, right? I mean, yeah.
Yes, I would think.
And the audio leak, that the second one that came out, you could hear King Mac in the distance, just like on the first one, and you hear Drew Aller talking as well, and he's talking about being mentally exhausted by coming to game time. And we've heard the players talk about this with walkthroughs and everything else. Drew Aller is in close proximity to that microphone, so a lot of people are jumping to conclusions on that. We're not saying that's who recorded it. We're just mentioning that the microphone picked him up pretty well on that recording. The important thing that I gathered out of the second recording is the amount of walkthroughs and the mental exhaustion. Some people will say that's a soft player. Other people will say, why are these guys not peaking on a Saturday? Why are they peaking on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? And they're going through 3-4 walkthroughs.
That's a fine line, because on the one hand, that is an issue. And on the other hand, how many times have you heard athletes say, the great thing about our coaches is we practice so hard that Saturday feels easy. Mm-hmm. You hear that all the time. The practice gets us ready for the now maybe too many meetings, too much of that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I think Terry shortened it up when he took over. I think he shortened that stuff up, and maybe that's because we're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks into the season, or maybe that was something that he thought needed adjusted.
And there could be a big difference between mental toughness and exhaustion and physical toughness, because let me tell you what, this team looked like, to me, a team that was not physically tough enough. Like, that's not the way they played. And then you get thoughts that, hey, they had a really long season last year, and they got more breaks and more off time this past off season than ever before.
James said so. James openly talked about that at length. Yeah.
How did that affect the season going forward? Were these guys dialed in physically the way that they should have been, could have been? And I think, you have maybe just a complete miscalculation too as part of all this. And I think you have a new guy who is a new head coach who will be very attuned to those types of things and getting this team like on the same page. That's the message from player. And to me, that's Matt Campbell's message.
And both Matt Campbell, we have heard from both Matt Campbell and from Terry Smith now. There's the door. If you're not in, go. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. We've heard that from both of them. And so that's going to be a theme, I think.
There's no better segue than what we just talked about to bring in our guest, presented by Wrapping Paper in Conshohocken, the best in your gift-giving experience. It's a good time to get some presents wrapped. Proud to be joined here on the BlueWhite Tailgate Podcast by 4-time Super Bowl champion and 1978 Penn State All-American, Mr. Matt Millen. Matt, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Let's take a look at this.
Matt, everybody knows of your broadcasting career, but what are you doing to stay busy outside of the booth right now?
I'm doing a lot of things. I'm in my shop most every day. I'm building something for somebody. It's funny how that happens, but most of the time my wife has me doing things, but generally I'm building a bunch of stuff. You know, we have other homes, and I'm redoing another building. So yeah, I'm pretty much building furniture or cabinetry or whatever.
Matt, when we I'm fascinated by this Matt Campbell hiring in terms of the chronology of it.
Sure.
And our pal Mark Wogenrich quoted you the other day as saying that when you realized that Matt Campbell was available, you texted Pat Kraft and said, "Pull the trigger." When did that happen? Because it seems so odd to me that the whole process with Campbell didn't start until after the BYU guy apparently said no. So what's your sense of the chronology of it?
Yeah, that's about right. That was right. Now Pat was aware of him, but Pat was on the Sataki guy, and then when that kind of fell through, I had been reading and I saw that he was interested in Matt Campbell, and so I've known Matt for probably 10 years or so. And the weird thing was Matt has done such a good job for wherever he's gone. He's a teacher. He's one of those guys that knows his players and lets his players know him. And so there's really nothing in between. It's kind of rare. He's one of those rare guys. And so when I saw his name, I was like, Matt Campbell. Oh, I texted Pat right away, and then I called him and I said, hey, go get it done. Don't even think twice about it. This is your guy. And he already was on it. Yeah. Pat was on it. And so and when he went and he said, I'm going to get it done. And of course I believed him, and he did. He did get it done. But I don't unless you've been around Matt, or unless you have really, watched him coach, you have no sense of it. How could we? You guys have never met him. Most people haven't met him. And some people have seen him up live and watching him. He's a teacher. And your best coaches are teachers, but some coaches are screamer teachers. Some coaches are guys who take their time with you. Matt is, when you're around a good teacher, you know it, because all your students learn, and the best teachers adapt to their students. And that's what he does. He's just, I don't know how else to say it, but he just got it. He's always had it, and he's had good success. He should have good success at Penn State, because the quality of player that he's getting is going to be much better. And they're going to have, they'll be bigger, faster, stronger. And in what you really want to see, bigger, faster, stronger, smarter. That gets lost in a lot of the evaluations, but those are the guys that he'll be having access to. So I expect that he'll have a lot of success.
Matt, can I ask you, just as far as Matt Campbell, why do you think, if you could talk a little more about maybe why he might be the good right fit for Penn State football now, knowing what they went through, knowing where they're at right now as a program?
Yeah. And so I think when you look at it that way, that means we're putting more stuff on where Penn State is, other than where Penn State's going to be going. And so because Penn State has had the experiences of what they've had, that's where they're at. It all changes when Matt walks through that door. I do think, and I don't know this at all, I'm just reading, and and I talk to very few people up at Penn State anymore. So it looks though it's a different time, right? This isn't the 70s with Paterno, when he kicked me off the team 3 times. So this is a different time. They're paying them. They're it's different. And I think the biggest thing you have to be able to do is understand the culture. And if you don't like what you see, you've got to change it. Changing a culture is not an easy task, because you're dealing with a bunch of young people, a bunch of young guys, and guys who don't really know exactly where they're at yet. The good part of that is you'll have a little bit of a hand on where they can get to. So you have to get buy-in. If you don't get buy-in, it's going to tank. But I believe that the strength of Matt Campbell is he's just who he is. There's nothing. It's not like you go, oh, this is a different guy than I expected. What you see is what you get. And like I said, he's a teacher. He'll take you from A to B if you want to. If you don't want to, he'll get rid of you. And that's what a good teacher will do. I mean, a good teacher will bring you along, but if you don't want to be there, this is my point. If you don't want to be there, then go. Move on. We'll teach somebody else.
Matt, a lot of the things that Terry Smith has sort of said have implied this, and then we talked to some of the players yesterday, and we got some really interesting stuff from King Mac, who said, sort of suggesting that what went wrong this year was cultural to some extent, and without necessarily asking you to rip any individual, is that your sense of it? Was this a failure of culture in this season?
And nobody would really know that unless you've been around it pretty tight. But let's say this, okay? You can take that sentence, what you just said, culture, and applying it to a team, and you can put that in every different team and in every different year, because every different year it's better, different.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to the Raiders, where we had two rules. Rule 1, cheating is encouraged. Rule 2, see rule number 1. That's the mindset you were looking at, right? And in that mindset, the culture of that team, it changed every day. Seemingly every day. It changed every year. From year to year, we were different. It was a different kind of team. We still tried to play a certain way. But there are a lot of different factors that speak to culture. What you really need for good culture is very strong leadership. And the leadership can't come from the coaches. It's got to come from the players. So we're talking about the individuals who are on your team. And so if you have a selfish group of guys, you're going to get a selfish team. If you have a bunch of guys who know how to work hard, that's what you're going to get. And you can cultivate that, and you can try to bring it along. And I think Matt will be able to do that. But it first starts with each individual guy. That's why it's important for Matt to get to know the players and for them to know him. It's a big deal. And that's the starting spot for where culture goes.
Matt, does it still resonate at all with you how Penn State, like their precipitous fall? I mean, we were looking at this as maybe arguably maybe their best team in years, if not maybe decades. And then to go from where they were to where they ended up being, does that still surprise you, resonate with you? And do you think for fans out there, can it be fixed this quickly with a new head coach?
The answer, yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is yes, it can. So as fast as they've fallen is as fast as they can regroup. There's skill there. There's talent there. I don't know where the buy-in is. And so whenever there is a shakeup, and now James is gone, and it's weird. I was just texting James. I didn't even know he got canned. And I had sent him a text. I said, look, I'm pulling for you. You guys got to win this week. And then I flipped my phone and I read a story. It's like, he just got tanked. So I texted him back. And I was like, hey, sorry about that. I didn't know. But the point of that is this. So within your culture, you've got to be able to have some strength. And the strength has to come from those guys. And every head coach knows who those guys are. Every coach knows that. And so you got to cultivate that, and you got to bring it out, and you got to put those guys in the right spots, and you've got to get them to have buy-in. And it really starts in the off season. And then it just keeps on growing. And then you just keep on feeding it through the years. And that's what gets the culture of that team. So can they do it? Sure, they can, because they're a talented group and they've been there, done that. So they understand it. They understand what it takes. So you get a little more direction. You're going to have some, direction for Matt. I think he'll handle that. I'm a big Matt Campbell fan. I was really happy that Pat Kraft made that call. That he hit a home run, and I don't even know if he knew it, but he did.
Matt, Terry Smith had a lot of support, and Terry Smith is staying. And you talk about buying in. Obviously, Penn State's going to have a bump in the road here or there with both Terry Smith and Matt Campbell on staff. And when you talk about buy-in, you might have players going to say to Coach Smith, well, if you were here, I'd be playing. How do those guys go about making sure none of that happens? And how do they go about coexisting, being that Terry's the head man now, and then staying on for Matt Campbell's program? That will be Matt Campbell's program for a long time.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good question, so this is going to sound a little harsh. I don't mean it to sound harsh for Terry, but there can be only one, right? There can be only one. That's it. And that's the way it is. And this is going to sound a little harsh, but it's just the truth. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. Terry's not a head coach. Terry is a position coach. Head coaches are different. I don't really know how to explain that to you other than I've been around a ton of different coaches, and I could see, and I've been around guys who are coming up. I've made the mistake of hiring not head coaches, and I've made the decisions also on hiring a good head coach. And so head coaches, they just have it. I don't know how to explain it. I can't define it. I can just tell you that when you walk in the room, they have it. If you're sitting here and if we have Paterno sitting in the seat, or we had what's his face from Alabama, he's
Bear Bryant.
Nick. Yeah, if we have Saban sitting in the seat, and if we had Woody Hayes sitting in the seat, every one of those guys, you'd know that guy is a head coach. And you just knew it, and you knew it. You knew it when he was 25, not when he was 50. They just have something about him. And the best way to find that out is when you get in a room and they don't have it, and you're trying to think that he does have it. I made that mistake. And then it's hard. It's really difficult. But a head coach, when you run into them, they're the head coach, and you also know when they're not the head coach. Like, I can say this, I hired a guy. Should never have hired him, and I got talked into it, which is my fault, 100% on me. And after 2 weeks, I was like, this guy is, I won't say it because he just,
Company.
how should I put this? Wasn't the toughest guy, or he was softer than soft could be. And I was like, how did I not see that? I mean, he just didn't have it. And so, yeah, you know it. And so Terry's a good solid position coach. Never, and the guy who's in charge is in charge. Everybody knows it, including the coaches. So you'll never have a problem with that.
But do you like the dynamic of Terry and what he did as the interim staying on at Penn State? Do you think how valuable is that?
Oh, well, in a situation like this, yeah, of course it's valuable. And but let me just say this: if it wasn't Terry, it was going to be somebody else. So it fell on him. He carried the mantle. He's done a good job. Now it's time, and we'll get the guy in place and move forward.
Matt, well, first of all, for people are listening who don't know, Matt was the GM of the Detroit Lions, so that's what he's talking about with hiring guys. But you said earlier you got kicked off. Joe kicked you off the team 3 times.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you for all 3 stories, but was there a theme that ran through those? Was there a theme that ran through those 3?
Yeah, there's a theme. He used to piss me off. I'd be like, what are you talking about? You're a little Italian guy. You got to be kidding me. And so really what it was just, I'm a pighead, and that's, and I can at times have a strong opinion on something. And when I thought he was wrong, I told him he was wrong. So
there you have it.
But there can be only one. And he was the one. So he kicked me off. I'll just tell you one story, which was probably the funniest part. We were in spring practice. It was my junior year, going into my senior year. So Joe didn't like fighting. I grew up, that's what I grew up doing, was fighting. That's what you did. And so in the middle of practice, somebody cut me or did something, whatever they did, and I proceeded to drill him. And so he threw me out, and I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. He told me, get out of here, get out of practice. I said, no, I'm not going anywhere, which I kind of stunned him, and he screamed at me, get out of here. And I said, no, I'm not moving. And he said, fine, stay there. We'll move the whole team this way. And he moved the whole team 30 yards away and left me standing there like the cheese stands alone. And I stood there and I was like, what a dope I am. And I walked off the field. So yeah, we had a couple different disagreements.
There you go.
Matt, how would you and Bruce Clark, your game, how would it translate today?
Good. Would translate very well. The difference with Joe had this thing, like he had this thing in his head. So I was 260 for him, and I played in the NFL at 265 as a backer. But Joe had this thing in his head about weight, and he'd be like, you're too big. And he just had that, like, I don't know where it came from. But at that time in football, at 265 for defensive end, it was a good size, Wasn't 300 pounds. But anyway, he had that in his mind. And so he would always be getting on Bruce and I about, you guys are you're too fat, Millen. All right, tell me about it. Then give me something else.
There you go.
So that's usually where it started, and then it would just piss me off, and we'd move on to something else.
Now, Matt, since you said soft earlier, so I was going to ask who was tougher between you and Bruce, but now I'm going to phrase it: which one of you was softer, you or Bruce?
Neither of us. That was one thing you didn't have to worry about. Like you wanted to, I think you didn't have to worry about that with us. I think that's one of the elements of football that I think toughness, mental toughness, physical toughness, you've got to have. If you don't have it, you'd play for the one coach that they talked me into hiring. Just, you can't have that. Especially the mental part, right? It's got to start, and that starts, that comes from your parents or your bringing up or whatever it is. So I just don't think there's any room for not having a mentally strong, tough kid.
Matt, when you looked at Penn State playing this year, did that stand out to you in any way?
Yeah.
Or did they look like they were a tough enough team, or was that really lacking in something that dramatically has to change to you from your view?
Not dramatically. Okay, so how do you measure physical toughness? How do you measure mental toughness? Because they tie together. Mm-hmm. And where you really see it is in discipline of scheme. when you're watching tape and you're breaking guys down, and I see a kid run around a block, or if I see a kid who constantly doesn't enforce the rules of scheme, and I know we got the guys physically not tough and then mentally not tough. It doesn't happen that way. And so when I see a kid who stands in there and just fights his rear end off all day long, doesn't give up position, is where he's supposed to be all the time. Sometimes not the flashiest player, and sometimes and sometimes those guys, those are your most steady players. They make a big play every now and then, but they're not like a big play guy all the time. But you know what you're getting. Those are the guys that you build a team with. The guys, every now and then they'll run around a block, or they will not maintain discipline of scheme, but they make a sack every now and then they run around and look at me, and then I look at them and I go, do more than that. Be consistent all the way through. If you're going to jump up and down like I used to, then you need to be consistent so you can jump up and down.
I like it. I'm good.
Matt, final question I have for you. For Matt Campbell's tenure to be considered a success, both nationally in Happy Valley, does he have to bring a national championship to Penn State?
Absolutely. That's what you're hiring him for. He knows that. You don't any guy can get you 10 wins. I shouldn't say any guy, but a good coach can get you 10 wins. We're hiring a great coach. A great coach gets us a natty. We won a national championship. We didn't go and do this. Pat Kraft didn't go. In fact, he said it. He wants to win. What does win mean? Win doesn't mean 10 games, 9 games, 11 games. Win means you're playing in the last game and you're winning. That's a national championship. That's what he's coming here for, and that's the only reason he's coming here for. And I think he probably won't say that, but that's his. I guarantee that's the first thing on his mind. That's his goal. So you'll have success with him. I don't know how long it's going to take, but they'll get to that national championship game, and they'll get a national championship.
You're predicting that.
No, I'm confident. I just know the kind of coach he is, and the kind of players that he's going to get. That combination should give you a national championship. He's going to have. He'll be the guy who makes you be disciplined. He'll be the guy who makes you have discipline of scheme. He'll be the guy who can elevate your game as a player. And when you have that and you're recruiting guys who have high skill sets, I think a national championship within your reach. I don't know why it wouldn't be.
All right.
Great
Thanks.
stuff. You've seen it all. You've done it all. 4-time Super Bowl champion, 1978 Penn State All-American Matt Millen. Thanks for being here on the BlueWhite Tailgate Podcast.
Anytime, guys. Good talking to you. Take care of yourselves.
Some pretty insightful stuff from Mr. Matt Millen right there, the Whitehall great and Lehigh Valley Hall of Famer. Guys, I love talking to Matt. I love seeing Matt. Him and Steve Wisniewski, both Penn State guys, both former Raiders. They both need to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. That's just my take. But he was great in my opinion.
I didn't realize 4 Super Bowls. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, that's pretty strong.
3 teams,
Yeah.
4 teams, 3 franchises, because the one was with the LA Raiders.
He was, he was very selectively impressive with his organizations, I mean, picking the right teams, the right times. I mean, do you think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame as a player for what he did on the field?
I think so. I think he's underrated. I think when you watch the NFL stuff,
Mike's not agreeing with you.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying I don't know. Hall of Fame. I used to love Hall of Fame arguments. Now they make my head hurt. It's just, I don't know.
And I think Matt has, downplayed his chances, because he says I wasn't Lawrence Taylor and stuff like that. He's very open, but the senior committees get him near the finish line every single time. And I don't know. I think it's something with the Raiders too. And, Al Davis isn't the most popular person or wasn't the most popular person in the Raiders.
Yeah, but there were Hall of Famers on those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that. I'm just saying in today, trying to get in today, looking back, I think that works against him. And I think it works against Wisniewski, who I think is the most underrated guard of all time in the NFL. So,
and you know who orchestrated, put together those teams personnel wise, those Raider teams, by the way?
No.
Ron Wolf. Okay. Ron Wolf.
Ron Wolf.
New Freedom, York County.
There you go.
Native Susquehanna graduate, Ron Wolf, who went on to become, of course, the GM of the Green Bay Packers, but he was Al Davis's right-hand man, personnel man, who made a lot of the moves to get the guys for the Oakland Raiders who did what they did.
So he's the second most distinguished alumnus from Susquehanna.
Yeah, Chaz Powell, right? No. Randy Etzel, but you're not saying, you're not really saying what you're saying.
Frank Bodani, of course.
Lord.
Oh, Frank went to. Oh, look at that, Frank! I've known you for 15 years. I didn't know you went to Susquehanna.
Obviously,
but that is partly why Ron Wolf is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame for what he did, not just with Green Bay, but with the Raiders.
Yep.
With the Raiders.
So we should have asked Mac about just popping into my head now that he's gone. From this podcast recording, should have asked him about the audio leak. How would he have handled that? How would Matt Millen have handled the audio leak?
Matt, he is a fountain of stories, and we just hanging around with him like at bowl games and stuff like that. It's a lot of laughs.
I think I had 2 breakfasts with him during the championship.
Yeah, he was hanging around a lot during the playoff run last year. Yeah,
that was tremendous.
Mike, the picture you sent me last year from the Fiesta Bowl, or it was on your Twitter, if I could have reached through the phone and smacked you, because I smacked you out of jealousy, because you're sitting next to Matt Millen, and I think you captioned it like, "Oh, look who I had breakfast with."
Oh, yeah. Well, that was what what we were talking about.
I'm sitting in my living room because I didn't get to the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, and then
one of the days, LeVar ambled up and joined this thing at one point.
Good times. That's what makes bowl trips awesome.
Yep.
I'm sure a moment maybe not like that, but in this game,
no,
there's gonna be some moments that people will remember. You're in New York City. All the stars come out in New York City for no matter what. It's still Yankee Stadium. Granted, I think this game's important for Penn State to win and to maintain, to be able to still say a winning record going all the way back to 2004. I think that's a little lost in that because Bill O'Brien talked about that.
He did
at Winona, Wisconsin. So I think this is important, and I think Terry Smith is going to have these guys kind of fired up for this game. Ethan Grunkmeyer. Terry had an interesting soundbite that he believed Ethan Grunkmeyer could deliver a national championship to Penn State. Grunkmeyer knows Matt Campbell. He was recruited by Matt Campbell to go to Iowa State.
Yep.
Is this smoke? Do you guys feel the way he progressed that this actually could be? Because Ethan Grunkmeyer came a long way from Iowa to the 2-minute drill against Rutgers, and I know they're different, but just seeing him throw the ball against Ohio State, at least in the second half, we know it didn't go downfield a lot, but he put one over the middle, and since that moment, it kind of took off for him a little bit.
I thought it was interesting that Terry mentioned the 2-minute drill against Rutgers because I thought that that's the one thing that I would take away from this season in terms of evidence of Grunkmeyer's progress was that 2-minute drill. That's sort of graduate level quarterbacking stuff, and he handled that really well. It could be that Terry's trying to politic to keep him around, right?
Well, here's the thing
for that, but yeah.
I think Penn State's quarterback situation is kind of I think they want Ethan Grunkmeyer, but if you're Matt Campbell, you also have your quarterback who was really good at Iowa State that has 1 year left. And will he, Rocco Beck, follow Matt Campbell and transfer to Penn State? And I think you'd want the best of all worlds if you're Matt Campbell, right? I mean, if Rocco Beck is entertaining that, you'd want him to come.
And he's in the portal, right?
I don't think he's announced. officially, no. I don't think he has. I mean, you can't officially join yet, but I mean, I don't think he's.
I thought he announced his intention to go into.
I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But Ethan Grunkemeyer, you'd like to have him too. But if Rocco Beck comes, I can't imagine Ethan Grunkemeyer staying. I don't know. And then Andrew, you mentioned Bo Pribula. I mean, there was a time where if Bo Pribula would have entered the transfer portal, or if you knew he was, you might think, oh, wow, he might be coming back to Penn State. But with the dynamics we're talking about, is that even an option? I mean, I'm kind of thinking with what we just mentioned, maybe there isn't much of a shot of Bo coming back to Penn State, even though that was his dream school growing up. Maybe he ends up with Franklin at Virginia Tech. But yes, he is entering too. So
if Beck comes to Penn State, it creates a tough situation for a guy like Grunkemeyer and a guy like Pribula, who might otherwise, maybe, who knows? We're not inside these guys' heads, but they might be thinking about it. But it's kind of, and Penn State is bringing in 2 quarterbacks from high school, right?
It wouldn't
forget those.
If Pribula ends up at Vatech, there's like some fifth dimension world out there controlling everything. I would be flabbergasted if that actually happened. I would. It's impossible, yeah, but I would be, because Bo comes to Penn State, grew up loving Penn State. A lot of people feel he wasn't given a fair shot. I personally don't think he was actually given a fair shot, because I don't think James could have afforded to have a 3-star quarterback come and beat the number 1 quarterback out. And even though James always said, I wanted a running quarterback, and I just don't feel he was ever utilized properly to his skill set. Obviously, he doesn't have the arm talent that Drew has, but he could do some things. We saw him play pretty well at times in the SEC this year before, the injury that kind of set him back. But it would be wild for that, if you feel you didn't have the fair shot at Penn State, to then follow that coach to Virginia Tech.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, that's.
But what I'm almost surprised he's entering the transfer portal. Not that I know anything about Bo's experience at Missouri, but I mean, other than the injury, he did really pretty well. Like, he was able to be a starter in the SEC at a major program. I'm kind of, just from the outside, a little surprised that after 1 year of everything going right in a way, except for the injury, why he's leaving again, why he's changing again. Unless,
how many if he stays at Missouri, how many quarterbacks from Pennsylvania are going to be on Missouri's roster next year?
Him and Matt Zollers, and do they have another guy then coming in?
I thought the LaSalle College High School guy's going there.
Okay, but so do you think that there's a chance that Bo really ends up back at Penn State?
Seems unlikely, but I don't know.
I think it's unlikely. I do, with all the dynamic change, but I would be shocked at Virginia Tech. I really would be.
Okay.
The old Indian
I understand your point. That's a perfectly good point, Andrew. I understand what you're saying. That's me reading into asking this young man questions when he was in high school, when he was at Penn State, and getting to know him a little bit. That's no inside information. I just would be shocked. It popped in my head, Frank, as you said it, and there's no inside information on what I just said. I'm just going off a gut feeling. Well, the quarterback thing is going to be interesting going forward. I mean, who knows? We're really speculating, and there's a lot of ways it could go.
I think it's going to be. I think Penn State's starting quarterback in 2026 is either going to be Ethan Grunkemeyer or Rocco Beck. It's going to be one of the two guys. I don't think there's a lot. I think it's too easy. They're two both right there in a way. One of them, Matt Campbell, has worked with and knows and loves. The other one he knows, and he's already done it at Penn State. I mean, why do you need to go somewhere else necessarily?
Okay, but what are the odds that they're both on the roster in August of 2026?
50-50 or less.
Yeah.
Maybe less. Maybe I'd go for less than that.
Yeah.
Because it's hard for me to think, once Ethan Grunkemeyer has tasted what he has and has been successful, how hard would that be for him to say, I'm going to stay and possibly then now sit all next year?
Yeah, it feels like one or the other, and not they're going to battle it out to start. It'll be one or the other is going to be here.
Plus, Rocco Beck's coming off. He's supposed to have surgery or did have surgery. So
he had surgery a couple days ago, I think.
Yep.
Expected to make a recovery, but expected is not as good as you're already healthy.
That's right. That's right. You said it.
Real quick, before we pick this game, and it's so tough to pick bowl games. Not every game is Jackson State Troy, where the guys are literally out there in rivalry and playing every down like it's their last down of football. The college football playoff. I know we're coming up here on an hour. We're over an hour. The college football playoff. I put out a tweet that got decent traction. I said every lawsuit against the college football playoff is legitimate after what was done with Notre Dame. Mike, I think you saw it. I totally am against whatever system is in place right now. Just selecting teams is it's just terrible. The BCS was a better system. The Bowl Alliance was a better system, and the Bowl Alliance is probably the worst system than this fraud that is being perpetuated on the American people.
Wow.
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree, Andrew.
Like,
I think the committee has done a better job than the BCS and a far better job than the Bowl Alliance, which was.
There's only 4 teams. Or 2 teams.
You had 3 teams: Alabama, Miami, Notre Dame. Only 2 of which were going to make the playoff. The 2 that made the playoff. One of them, Alabama, had by far the best strength of schedule and strength of record of the 3 teams. And the other beat the 3rd team head to head and had the same 1-loss record and similar metrics. So I don't think it's insane that Notre Dame didn't make it. I would have, if it was up to me, Alabama would not have gotten in. It would have been Miami. But here's the thing. Here's the thing where maybe I agree with you a little bit. That this is a corrupt process. There's too many athletic directors, right? There's too many athletic directors on the committee, and there's a feeling that if Virginia had won the ACC championship game, then Virginia gets in the playoff. They would not have, the ADs wouldn't have got together and said, let's make sure we have an ACC team in the playoff. So Notre Dame's probably in if Virginia beats Duke, which seems, that's an insane statement, but I think it's probably true. That's the thing where I tend to dismiss conspiracy theories, but that is the one thing where, okay, that seems like it's pretty flawed.
Okay, so why? But then isn't it in a way? Notre Dame is not in the playoff, and James Madison is, and it's nothing against JMU. Right?
But that's not the committee.
Yeah.
That's the rules.
That's
I don't like the rule then, because my point is that you're having a team like that, which is deserving of everything they can get. But I can't see how Notre Dame, when you look at that field and you see that, how that field can have that team in it and not Notre Dame, which won 10 straight games. And it's weird that suddenly there's like, if anything, you think people be yelling about Notre Dame getting extra special treatment. It's the other way. And it's just crazy to me that,
which happens last year.
If Penn State won 10 straight games and their first 2 losses were the ones, people would be going bananas here.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't get. That doesn't.
I would say this, though. For years, we've heard, since this has existed, 4 teams, 12 teams, whatever, we've heard, well, everybody knows that the committee's in bed with ESPN and the other TV networks. Therefore, if it's at all viable to put Alabama and Notre Dame in the playoff, they're going to do it. Well, this is 3 times in the last 4 years when you could have made a viable argument for Alabama and or Notre Dame, and they didn't get it.
Right.
My thing is, and I just want to make a couple points. JMU gets in because these conferences and NCAA are trying to avoid, conferences are trying to avoid antitrust lawsuits to the max. So there's all these loopholes to get these lesser power teams in it. So we know that's why. And it's America. Everybody loves to get sued. So why not? My case with Notre Dame is, if Notre Dame beat Texas A&M, there's no argument that they're in. Just say Texas A&M comes up short in the way the game played out. They get called for that holding penalty at the end, and Texas A&M loses. everybody thinks Texas A&M all year was one of the best 5 teams in the country, and they happened to lose a rivalry game. They would be, in theory, where Notre Dame was, looking out, because Alabama happened to get into the SEC championship because Texas A&M didn't play Ole Miss. They didn't play Alabama. Like, these schedules have to be fixed. That you cannot have 4 top teams in a conference not play each other, where you're going to 5 tiebreakers and everything else. And then to have Notre Dame at 9, Miami at 11, and BYU somehow losing gets Notre Dame out of the playoff. That makes no sense. It was almost like a made-for-TV soap opera to me. BYU dropped 2 spots. Last year, SMU dropped a couple spots. Alabama didn't move.
Well, the BYU thing is just because they're losing, put Miami and Notre Dame right next to each other. And then this guy who's the head of the committee goes on ESPN and says, well, now that they're right next to each other, which is bullshit. That was just a stupid thing for him to say. I mean, I don't put too much stock in that. But you made the good point. And again, this is not the committee's fault. These conferences have gotten so big that there's huge disparity in strength of schedule within conferences. So that, to me, that eliminates the argument for Alabama. Oh, they shouldn't get penalized for playing in the SEC championship game. They were maybe only the 4th or 5th best team in the SEC. I don't buy that argument at all. Anyway,
I get it. And my gripe is the system. And people are like, you're just pissed because Notre Dame didn't get in. My gripe starts in week 1. The whole system that's being perpetuated with how these things are playing out is my entire gripe. Let's get to the more important things. Penn State versus Clemson. Pick the game. Pinstripe Bowl. There's nothing better. Forget Miami. Forget Hard Rock. There's nothing better than going into the house that Ruth built. Bob Shepard, the ghost of Bob Shepard everywhere doing the announcing. Monument Park. There's no place better to play a football game.
Are we predicting? I will predict Penn State 31, Clemson 28. I can't get I don't love Penn State in this spot, but I did 27 guys missing the game. I could see how this roster uncertainty decimated Penn State in the Peach Bowl a couple years ago. Well, so you look at this game and you say, who is more likely to have that kind of mess on their hands heading into the game? Well, to me, it's the team that has 27 guys out. So I'm not nuts about it, but I'm going to pick the Nits for that reason.
Yeah, I had to do a prediction as soon as the game was announced. You leave that for everybody else's take on why that is smart or not. But at the time, you're trying to predict a game where you have no idea who's playing in it. And at the time, I thought, well, if Cade Klubnik plays, Clemson's quarterback,
which he apparently is.
Which he now is. But at the time, I'm thinking if he plays, Clemson has an edge, right? A decided edge. And I picked Clemson 28-20. Now I will redo another prediction story maybe next week. And now I'm kind of, I'm not sure what to do here, because now that Clemson has so many guys that we know that aren't playing, is this going to look like a second half game where neither team wants to win? I mean, I don't know, because
we really don't know what we're walking into.
Right. So it's really hard to predict. I mean, I'm kind of like going back now thinking maybe I go more toward what you're saying, Mike, in that, the thing we just don't know is just like who's really going to be playing, who's going to be playing in the second half. And I guess I'll give Terry Smith credit that he got this team together to do what they did the final, especially 4 weeks of the season. Maybe that can happen one last time, even if it's younger guys playing more significant roles. So maybe I will go back to a tight Penn State win. I don't, we'll consider it.
I'll pick Penn State to win.
All right.
Penn State to win. I'm going to go 27-21 Penn State. Yeah. And I'm picking that based on Terry Smith and his attitude and having these guys. I don't know. Terry Smith has an infectious attitude, and listening to the players. We talk about King Mack being a talker. Terry's not a talker. Terry's a doer. And, Rapplier, he's a talker. I want to give him a shout out because I think he's a great talker as well. But I think these guys are going to go out and win one for Terry. It's not going to be a viral move.
Kind of like the way pro wrestlers are great talkers.
Yeah.
He's in show business, that guy. One interesting thing about this game. When Penn State was 3, 4, 5 weeks into this season, what they did with James Franklin, some people at Clemson, when Clemson was at a similar spot, struggling, losing by 2 touchdowns at home to Andrew Kalista's alma mater, 3-9 or whatever they did. Anyway, a lot of people in South Carolina were talking about, let's get rid of Dabo. And Dabo is still here. And what does that mean for their program and for that is dynamic? Who knows? But I think it's worth mentioning.
Somebody texted Dabo and said, "Hey, get a win this week."
Oh, okay. Well,
and Dabo was still there. That's a great. Matt Millen telling us that is awesome.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That was awesome. Want to give a shout out to Mr. Matt Millen for coming on the Blue White Tailgate Podcast. He's always great to talk to. So insightful. A lot of praise to be thrown his way for just, taking us inside his mind and what he looks for. And, he's seen it all, done it all in the football world at every single level. Mr. Bodani, Mr. Gross, are you guys good? Long episode.
Thank you.
This is our final podcast before the game. We will have one immediately following the Pinstripe Bowl against Clemson. And we will also have one, I believe, on Sunday between Mr. Gross and myself from the floor of the Giants Center, Penn State versus
Penn
State versus Pitt.
They're playing Pitt in something.
Go get them. Go get them, guys.
Exactly. Frank's going to take a break from the wrestling beat and come and talk to us. We'll talk more wrestling coming up in the new year as well as hockey. But up until Christmas time, it's Penn State football and a little bit of Penn State basketball. So that does it for this edition of Blue White Tailgate Podcast. Thanks a lot to Wrapping Papered in Conshohocken for jumping on board. And thank you to all the listeners. Email the show, bluewhiteTailgatePodcast@gmail.com. Have a Merry Christmas, safe travels to everyone, and we will see you in New York.